My name is Councillor John Truscott and I'm Chair of the Planning Committee, and I'll just go through the initial notices. I know they're a bit tedious, but we have to do them for the sake of the record and for those people who may be listening to this or maybe wanting to watch the video. So, webcasting notice. I must remind you that the audio of this meeting is being live broadcast on the Council's website, and the video of the meeting will be published after the meeting and will be available on YouTube. And as I mentioned earlier, last month's meeting got 17 hits. Right, I'd like to introduce the officers from Gedling Borough Council who will be providing support during the meeting. They are from the Planning Department, Mike Avery, the Assistant Director of Planning and Regeneration, and Kevin Cartwright, Principal Planning Officer. From Legal Department, we have Sarah Pregon, the Solicitor, and I'd like to welcome Sarah Fayaz, the trainee solicitor who's here tonight to observe our proceedings. From Democratic Services, I have Alec Doubley, Service Manager, Democratic Services, and Kate Goodall, Democratic Services Officer and Clerk to the Committee.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Could everybody mute their microphones, please?
I was just about to say, will all members of the committee please ensure that their microphones are switched off or muted at all times when they're not required to speak, and only switched on or unmuted when they're called on to speak and they speak clearly and distinctly into their microphones. When a councillor is called on to speak, will they please limit their contributions to 3 minutes or less, in order that everyone gets a fair chance to air their views. Now, there are some changes to normal procedures because this is a virtual meeting and not a real live meeting, so to speak. Under the apologies for absence and substitutions, the clerk to the committee will introduce all councillors who registered their attendance, as well as apologies and substitutions. Secondly, at that point in the agenda where I'd normally ask for a proposer and seconder from the floor, to simplify things, I'll propose each item as on the agenda as chair, and Councillor Paul Wilkinson will second as vice chair. It's in no way an indication of approval or otherwise to any proposal or application by either of us, but merely a means of expediting the proceedings. When it comes to that point in the agenda, when I'd normally open the meeting up for contributions from the floor, instead, the clerk to the committee will ask councillors in alphabetical order to make their contributions, questions, etc. Please observe the 3-minute time limit. When it comes to the vote on the recommendations at the end of the item, it will be similarly conducted. Okay, I hope you've all received your supplementary photographs and plans and elevations and whatnot through the post. Right, we'll start the meeting. First, I would like to announce that agenda item 6, application number 2020/0698, 19 Ash Close, Arnold, has been withdrawn. So the first item on the agenda is attendance, apologies for absence and substitutions. Kate, would you like to introduce the councillors present?
Yes, thank you. So Councillor Truscott?
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Present.
Councillor Adams?
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Barnes?
Yeah.
Councillor Barnfather?
Yes, present.
Councillor David Ellis?
Present.
Councillor Rachel Ellis?
Present.
Councillor Elwood?
Present.
Councillor Hope?
Present.
Councillor Keneally?
Present.
Councillor Lawrence?
Present.
Councillor Miller?
Present.
Councillor Paling?
Present.
Councillor Parr?
Present.
Councillor Scroggy?
Present.
And Councillor Wheeler.
Here.
Thank you, Chair. That's everybody present and with no apologies.
Thank you very much, Kate. Second item is to approve the correct record of the minutes of the meeting held on 21st of October, which you'll find on page 7 to 38 of your agenda papers. I will move as chair and ask Paul Wilkinson to second as vice chair.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you very much. Will you please indicate whether there is anything that you don't approve of, otherwise we'll take them as read. No one? Okay. Next item is the Planning Committee protocol, which you'll find on pages 39 to 41, which I'm sure you have all read and understood. Third item on the agenda is declaration of interests, and I'll declare a collective non-pecuniary interest on behalf of all members on agenda item 7. Hello?
Can I give my interest on minute number 8?
Can I just finish?
I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry. I thought you'd done it.
No. Agenda item 7, as the council is in ownership of the application site, and the council is also the applicant. Sorry. Who was just speaking that they wanted to give a
Councillor Barnes.
I just wanted to declare an interest on item number 8.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What type of interest would you like to declare, Councillor Barnes?
The lady just comes and does me and Sanders' feet, so we know her personally, so it's a personal interest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Agenda item 4, application number 2020-0238, land at Ashdale, Nottingham Road, Burton Joyce, outline planning applications for 11 new dwellings with matters of access, scale and layout to be considered, which you'll find on page 54 of your agenda paper. Thank you. We have a speaker on this item, Mrs. Sally-Ann Johnson, who is a resident objector and whose letter of representation will be read out by Alec Dudley. Alec?
Thank you. Whilst development of the site is probably inevitable, important risks have not been fully presented or addressed. Proposals to pollard the trees bordering the original houses is welcome, but they are dangerous now. Given the required limits on clearance work during the spring and summer, this work should be done now and made a condition of approval. Otherwise, it is likely to be at least another year before the trees are made safe. There is a combined impact from the Ashdale and Mill Field Farm developments, which is being understated. Construction of Millfield Farm is not complete, so its real-life impact cannot be judged yet. With these proposals, the number of houses on and accessed from Millfield Close increases from the original 8 to 22, with Millfield Farm, and 33 with Ashdale, all family houses. The number of specified parking spaces increases from 16 to 47, and then 77. It is clearly wrong to state that such a sizable increase is not significant for infrastructure load to pedestrians or traffic flows. Increased load on the sewerage system is significant and no additional capacity is proposed. How can this be reasonable? The report states that no consideration has been given to alternative access onto the site, e.g. from St Helens Grove, which would reduce the traffic flow and danger at the Millfield Junction. Why? The Millfield Junction onto the A612 is already dangerous, yet no action is proposed to mitigate this. Contrary to the report statement, we do not expect the developer to install a pedestrian crossing, but we do expect the council to urgently initiate work with the Highways Authority to make the road between Millfield and Maris much safer for pedestrians and road traffic. And that's the end.
Thank you very much, Alec. Now I will ask Mike Avery to introduce this item for us, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The site currently comprises part of the residential curtilage of Ashdale. It is mainly laid to lawn and includes a number of trees, which are protected by a tree preservation order. The site is surrounded by existing residential properties situated at St Helens Grove to the north and northeast, and residential properties on Millfield Close, which are to the south and southwest. Millfield Close is a cul-de-sac with a turning head to the cul-de-sac adjoining the southern boundary of the application site. The site is within the built-up area of Burton Joyce and is in close proximity to local services. It would, however, result in the loss of garden land, but this is permitted by policy LPD 34, where a proposal would result in a more efficient use of land. The site is situated within flood zone 2, and therefore it's been necessary for the applicant to demonstrate that there are no sequentially preferable sites which are at a lower risk of flooding. The test has identified a number of sites within Burton Joyce which could be suitable for residential purposes, but these have been discounted because they're either also located in flood zone 2 within the green belt, identified as a local wildlife site, or are unavailable for development. National and local planning policies allow an exception test to be applied where it can be demonstrated that the development will provide sustainability benefits and the development would be safe over its lifetime. There is an identified need for housing within Burton Joyce, and the flood risk assessment demonstrates that floodwater will not pose undue risk to the occupants of the properties. The principle of residential development is therefore accepted. The proposed access to the site will be from Millfield Close. While I appreciate that the number of vehicular movement on Millfield Close would increase, as highlighted by the resident objector, the Highways Authority has no objection to the proposed access arrangements, and I'm therefore satisfied that the proposed access is safe. The scale of the proposed dwellings will be comparable to the established and recently constructed properties on Millfield Close, and I therefore consider that the proposed scale is acceptable. Similarly, I consider that the layout respects the character of the area, and it would ensure that high amenity value trees protected by the tree preservation order are retained. The application has been supported by an ecological appraisal, which makes further recommendations for additional survey work to be undertaken prior to the commencement of development. Planning obligations are required in relation to secondary education, public open space, and a local labour agreement, as detailed in the officer report. Chairman, I recommend that outline planning permission is granted in accordance with the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. So the proposal is an outline planning application number 2020/0238 for up to 11 dwellings with matters of access, scale and layout considered. So I will formally move the application as chair and ask Councillor Wilkinson to second.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I'll ask Kate to open the debate by running through the roll call of councillors, please.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to ask Mike Avery a couple of questions. The flood zone 2, Mike, that you've mentioned, what's the regularity of flooding for flood zone 2? Is 2 the grade of flooding possibility, or is it a type of flooding, i.e. is it sort of surface water or is it river flooding? Do we have any sort of information on what that particularly is, first and foremost? Secondly, I'm really interested in the highways point, and that there's been no objections. It is an area, particularly quite a hot spot recently for problems with cars and bumps. In fact, there was a bump earlier on today in that same section, and the crossing aspect, because it's such a busy carriageway. There was a lady a year or so ago that has an issue with getting a pushchair across because of the way that the crossing was laid out. And so I'm quite surprised that there's not more being done for a crossing and more being done on the actual junction. And also, you say, can you confirm finally, sorry, that all the TPOs are retained in their entirety as well, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. So in terms of the type of flooding, it will be surface water, given the proximity of the site to the river. Everything on the southern part of the main road going through Burton Joyce is located within flood zone 2. Obviously, to the northern side of the main road, the land rises, and it's at a much higher level. So it's surface water. In terms of the junction and the access arrangements to the site, this has been carefully looked at by the Highways Authority. And while I do have sympathy for the comments that have been raised by local residents and the resident speaker, that the volume of traffic on Millfield Close would increase, having regard to the local plan allocation, which is currently being built out and approved by Planning Committee, and the proposal, the overall level of traffic, and as I say, that junction onto the main road will be acceptable, and the Highways Authority haven't requested any further mitigation measures. And your third question relates to the TPOs. Some of the trees would be removed. There has been a full survey which has been undertaken, but those trees with the highest amenity value would be retained. And it should be noted that following the submission of the application, so the application as initially submitted didn't include the reserved matter of layout. What the case officer actually did was secured a layout at this outline application stage so that we could be sure that a layout could be accommodated on the site while still retaining those trees of the most significant amenity value. And they're primarily located to the boundaries of the site, and hence the layout proposed.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Barnes.
No comment.
Councillor Barnfather.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just one question for Mr. Avery. Can you just remind me, Mr. Avery, if you would, what is the approved density, recommended density for residential development within Burton Joyce, and what is the density of this development, please?
To calculate the density of this development, I don't have the density to hand. We would need to defer, and we would need to actually calculate what the density is, Councillor Barnfather. But I can advise that the density of this development is comparable to the density of the development which has been approved on the southern part of Millfield Close.
Okay, I'm grateful for that. Normally, I thought we had density in our documentation, Mr. Avery. Sorry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Obviously, each, whether it be an urban residential area or a parish residential area, has a different allocated recommended minimum density in the plan, and I just find it useful to actually be able to compare an application to the recommended density. As I say, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here. But,
No, I appreciate that, Councillor Barnfather, and you're absolutely correct. I will ensure that the future reports going forward do include details in relation to density, having regard to the density requirements set out in the plan. But having regard to the submitted layout plan, the density is clearly comparable with the density that has been approved to the south of Milford Close.
I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Councillor David Ellis.
No comments, thank you.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
No comments, thank you.
Councillor Elwood.
Thank you. Yeah, just seeking one point of clarification. Really, in the reports, it refers to Ashdale retaining its existing access point. I'm just struggling to sort of see where that is on the location plan. I don't know whether maybe you could just clarify where that is. It just looks like as if it's almost cut off with the new area. It would be a bit maybe just useful just to clarify where that access point is. Thank you.
So that access point is on to Nottingham Road. And I think if we were in the committee chamber, I'll be using the pointer now to point to exactly whereabouts that is. I don't think we're going to be able to point directly to that access unless Mr. Cartwright's able to do that with the mouse or the cursor on the screen. I'm not able to annotate the graphics using the laptop.
Oh, there we are.
Are members able to see my annotation of the plan? Can we see it along Millfield Close coming out onto Nottingham Road Junction?
Yeah.
Yeah. No problem. Not a problem.
So how do you get to Ashdale?
So Ashdale is accessed directly from Nottingham Road.
Okay.
So at the curtilage of Ashdale is shown in the blue line to the north, and there's an access point from Nottingham Road, approximately in the location that Mr. Cartwright is showing with the cursor on the pointer on the screen.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hope.
Sorry, I was switched off. No comment.
Lee?
No comment.
Councillor Lawrence.
No comment.
Councillor Miller.
No comment.
Councillor Paling.
Thank you. I am surprised that Highways haven't made any request for support for a crossing for Nottingham Road or some sort of way of, I don't know, making it possible because the road has got very busy there. The two roads coming out when both the roads are fully completed will be a problem, I think, for Burton Joyce. But apart from that, if Highways say it isn't going to be a problem, I don't see what we can do about it. Thank you.
Councillor Parr.
I've got concerns about the highways, and when I'm looking at the images I've got in front of me, and I've just watched Kevin go through with the his annotation, it seems a very nice narrow entrance from Nottingham Road. What kind of width are we looking at when we're talking about access and egress?
So in terms of the width of the access, the Highways Authority have looked at the width and it complies with minimum requirements. So we've got a layout plan and the Highways Authority will have taken measurements from that plan and the existing road is already there. So this has been fully assessed by the Highways Authority. In terms of the access arrangements, the only other option would be to create another, to intensify and create another access directly onto Nottingham Road through Ashdale, but that would result in a further junction. So that, that's likely to generate some significant highway concerns by doing that. The Highways Authority are content that in this instance, the existing junction to Nottingham Road, the Millfield Close junction, is the most appropriate form of accessing this site.
Thank you, Mike.
Councillor Scroggy?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add a couple of things, really. It's pretty much been answered straight off the bat by Councillor Adams's question. The access is a thing for me. Obviously, Millfield Close development, then this potential one next to it, and then we've also got the Gedlin Access Road as well. So I think the traffic there has got to be quite horrendous. But the biggest problem I've got is on page 55, 7.32, the tree protection orders. I appreciate what Mr. Avery said, but as a committee, if we're putting a value on trees and putting protection orders on them, and then removing them for developments, I sometimes struggle to see the point of TPOs if we're just going to be doing that. It doesn't really say much in the report about the assessment from the about the trees. Is there any sort of I'm struggling to understand why we can cut down some of the trees but not others. Can you I don't suppose you can make head and tail of that, Mr. Avery?
Yes, I can. So there's an area TPO on the entire site. So my understanding is it's somewhat of a dated tree preservation order on the site. The amenity value of all of the trees have been assessed. So there's the trees close to the centre of the site, which are far less visible. So it's the trees towards the edge of the site, which would be retained. They're the trees that are most visible within the public realm, and that's why it's been important to ensure that if the development does come forward, that those trees are protected. So that's why the case officer wanted layout to be considered as part of this planning application, so that the most significant trees, which have the visual amenity value, are retained. So we can see that the trees closest to Nottingham Road and those trees that will be visible from Millfield Close in particular, they are all retained to, as far as possible, maintain the character of the area.
Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler?
No comments, mate. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Kate. Happy to support the officer's recommendations with the caveat that I share and echo Councillor Paling's comments regarding access.
Councillor Truscott?
Yeah, I'm quite content with the application. As the speaker said, it was pretty inevitable that it would be built on. It's not an over-intensive application, synthetically designed houses. The old Ashdale itself, the historic building, is being retained. I think it's a good development, and I'm in favour of it, and I would certainly vote in favour of it.
Would anybody else like to come back? Okay, thank you.
Right, so if everybody is finished and everyone is content to move to the vote, the recommendation is on page 60 of your agenda papers. The grant outline planning permission with the matter of access, scale and layout approved and subject to the owner entering into the section 106 agreement and to the condition listed. Kate, if you could go through the roll call for me, please.
Yes, Councillor Adams.
Against.
Councillor Barnes.
For.
Councillor Barnfather.
For.
Councillor David Ellis.
For.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
For.
Councillor Elwood.
For.
Councillor Hope.
Switched off.
For.
Councillor Keneally.
For.
Councillor Lawrence.
For.
Councillor Miller.
For.
Councillor Paling.
For.
Councillor Parr.
For.
Councillor Scroggy.
I'll abstain.
Councillor Wheeler.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
And Councillor Truscott.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That was carried.
Okay, so that application is approved. We move on to agenda item 5, which is application number 2020/0258, land north of Applewick Lane, Linby. Application for the development of 18 houses you'll find on page 70 of your agenda papers. And there's the attached viability report on page 3 to 102. And I will ask Mike Avery to introduce this application for us, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Planning permission is sought for the construction of 18 dwellings on land that was initially set aside for the construction of a primary school, pursuant to the outline planning permission granted for residential development, education provision, public open space and access. The principle of residential development has therefore been established, albeit with the primary school as an alternative to the proposed 18 dwellings. The County Council, as the education authority, has confirmed that a school in this location is no longer required. Discussions between the County Council and the developer are ongoing to secure a commuted sum payment to reflect the value of the school land as an alternative to it being transferred to the County Council for the construction of a school on the site. The proposed development will be seen as a logical extension to the existing layout being constructed on the wider site, and the design, scale and appearance of the proposed dwellings would accord with the approved development. Car parking provision will be in full conformity with our car parking supplementary planning document. In terms of highway impacts, the trip generation will be more favourable than the school, and the Highways Authority have confirmed they have no objection. Policy LPD 36 requires the provision of affordable housing on sites of 15 dwellings or more. The appropriate percentage of affordable housing will depend on the sub-market areas. In this particular locality, the requirement is for 30% affordable housing. At the time of the consideration of the outline application, it was considered that 30% affordable housing contribution required should be provided by way of a commuted sum payment to allow provision elsewhere in the borough within the main centres of population, as it was considered that in this location, the take-up of affordable housing may be reduced. Accordingly, in lieu of on-site provision, a contribution of £800,000 was secured via a Section 106 agreement with the council. As a wider scheme has no on-site provision, it's considered that requiring 5 units to be provided on site would be somewhat perverse and would likely to be unattractive to registered providers. As such, it is considered that a payment in lieu of on-site housing provision is an acceptable and pragmatic compromise in these circumstances, taking into account the history of the site. Having regard to the methodology set out in the Council's Affordable Housing Supplementary Planning document, a contribution of £164,092 is sought. This would be secured by way of a planning obligation and subsequently expended by the Council to increase or approved affordable housing provision in the borough of Gedling. The primary contribution is £69,704 and the secondary contribution is £71,625. On-site public open space is to be provided and a future maintenance contribution secured. The wider residential development provides for both formal and informal open space provision, and therefore a further contribution towards play equipment is not considered to be reasonable. No contribution is sought towards secondary healthcare, as this will be at variance with the MPPF and the SIL regulations. Further to the information contained in the report, a local labour agreement is considered to be necessary to comply with policy LPD 48 as the development meets the threshold for an agreement. It is recommended that this is secured by a planning condition which is consistent with the method of securing such provision for the wider site. Chairman, I recommend that permission is granted in accordance with the report, but with an additional condition requiring the development to be undertaken in accordance with a local labour agreement to be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. So the proposal is application number 2020/0258 for the development of 18 houses with addition of the condition that Mike explained. I'll formally move the application as chair and ask Councillor Wilkinson to second, please.
Formally seconded, Chair.
Thank you, and I'll ask Kate to open the debate by running through the roll.
Councillor Adams.
Yeah, no comment. Thanks, Kate.
Councillor Barnes.
No comment, thank you.
Councillor Barnfather.
Yes, thank you, Chair. An observation, really, more than a question. I have some knowledge of this, having discussed it at Policy Committee at County Hall. The original site, as shown, is too small for its intended purpose for educational facilities. It would only provide a school of 105 places, which would effectively be a half-year group. And obviously we don't build schools of that size anymore. The area is well served by other primary provision on Papawick Green, and the school, whose name escapes me, at the top of Balmoral Road, running towards Hucknall Leisure Centre. And there is an intended 210 place primary school on the top Wiggay site, which is obviously now the development has commenced there. And that school will be on a site which has the ability to be extended, if necessary, up to a 420 place primary as demand may increase. So there is sufficient primary education provision within walking distance of this new development on land north of Papawick Lane. And that's why the site is superfluous to its originally intended purpose. I have no questions. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor David Ellis.
Thank you. As it's been confirmed that education does not need the school, it seems perfectly sensible to me, the proposals to use it as it's proposed in keeping with the rest of the site. So I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
Yes, I agree with the previous comments. No further comment from me, thanks.
Councillor Elwood.
Yes, yeah, useful to hear from Councillor Barnfather some of the background to this development there, so that was useful. But yes, I have no objections to the application. Thank you.
Councillor Hope.
No further comment.
Councillor Keneally.
No further comment.
Councillor Lawrence.
Just a comment. I understand that the principle of no affordable housing has already been established, but it is disappointing. I'm surprised that there aren't people in Papawick who could do with affordable housing. But I will support the recommendation as I said at the beginning, it's already been established.
Councillor Miller.
No further comment.
Councillor Paling,
No further comment.
Councillor Parr,
No further comment apart from supporting the recommendation.
Councillor Scroggy,
No comment to make.
Councillor Wheeler,
No comments to make, thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson,
Happy to support the officer's recommendations.
Councillor Truscott.
Yeah, I'm happy to support the officer's recommendations. A few extra houses on that particular development are always welcome. I understand it's very popular, so good idea.
Okay, would anybody else like to come back? Okay, thank you.
Okay, if everybody is their say, I'll move to the vote. The recommendation is on page 78 of your agenda paper to grant full planning permission, subject to the owner entering into a section 106 agreement and the other conditions listed, and the extra condition that Mike Avery mentioned earlier. Kate, will you run through the roll call, please?
Yes, Councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor Barnes.
4.
Councillor Bonfather.
4.
Councillor David Ellis.
4.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
4.
Councillor Elwood.
4.
Councillor Hope.
4.
Councillor Keneally.
4.
Councillor Lawrence.
4.
Councillor Miller.
4.
Councillor Paling.
4.
Councillor Parr.
4.
Councillor Scroggy.
4.
Councillor Wheeler.
4.
Councillor Wilkinson.
4.
And Councillor Truscott.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That was carried.
Okay, thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 7. Application number 2020/1042 Eagle Square, Front Street, Arnold. Change of use application to relocate 12 market stalls, which you'll find on page 116 of your agenda papers. I've already stated our collective non-pecuniary interest, and I'd like Mike Avery to introduce this application for us, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Permission is sought for a temporary market at Eagle Square to permit the continued operation of the market whilst the redevelopment of Arnold Marketplace takes place. The proposal would utilise 12 of the existing market stalls, which would be relocated to the site and arranged as per the submitted plan, which should now be available for you to see on your computer screen. Further to the publication of the report, the separate street trading consent application has now been approved by the Environment and Licensing Committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. So the proposal is application number 2020/1042, temporary relocation of 12 market stalls in Eagle Square. I will formally move the application as chair and ask Councillor Wilkinson to second, please.
Formally seconded, Chair.
Thank you, and I'll ask Kate to open the debate.
Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, nothing really so much about the application, but glad as we step closer to getting the area in Arnold redeveloped. So fantastic to see it moving onwards. Thank you.
Councillor Barnes.
Yes, I support this application. I think it's very important to make sure the market keeps running and living, and by moving there temporary while we get the new development done makes a lot of sense. So I support the application.
Councillor Bonfather.
Yeah, no comments to make, thank you.
Councillor David Ellis.
It's a sensible proposal. I'll support it. Thank you.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
This seems a sensible and logical proposal, which will enable our market traders to continue trading, even more important in this time of economic uncertainty. I will be supporting this proposal.
Councillor Elwood.
Yes, I'm happy to support the application. Thank you.
Councillor Hope.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think we do have to keep the market going, and this is a sensible way forward whilst the square is developed.
Councillor Keneally.
I support the application.
Councillor Lawrence.
No comment.
Councillor Miller.
I will support the application.
Councillor Paling.
I support the application.
Councillor Parr.
Totally support the application. It's coming at the right time as well. Thank you.
Councillor Scroggy.
No comments.
Councillor Wheeler.
Totally support the recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
I'm very happy to support. It seems to be a very practical and sensible solution to ensure that the market continues to function whilst the main site is developed. So yeah, has my full support.
Councillor Truscott.
Yeah, I agree with everybody's comments they made already. I support it as well.
Would anybody like to come back? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so there we have the recommendation on page 121 of your agenda papers to grant full planning permission subject to conditions listed. Kate, you'd like to go through the roll call again?
Councillor Adams.
4. Thank you.
Councillor Barnes.
4.
Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor David Ellis.
4.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
4.
Councillor Elwood.
4.
Councillor Hope.
4.
Councillor Keneally.
4.
Councillor Lawrence.
4.
Councillor Miller.
4.
Councillor Paling.
4.
Councillor Parr.
4.
Councillor Scroggy.
4.
Councillor Wheeler.
4.
Councillor Wilkinson.
4.
And Councillor Truscott.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That was carried.
Okay, that application is approved. Move on to agenda item 8. Reach of planning control, reference number 0186/2020, agricultural land north of Ashdale Farm Bank of Woodborough. Construction of an unauthorised building and associated engineering works, which you'll find on page 124 of your agenda papers. Mike, do you want to speak to this one?
I don't think I need to specifically outline the application, Councillor Truscott, but the point that I would like to make is that the structure is not within the residential curtilage of the property. It is outside of the residential curtilage, and I think the photograph that Mr. Cartwright is going to display on the screen now, clearly shows the unauthorised development. Thank you.
Okay, so we have breach of planning control number 0186/2020, construction of unauthorised building and associated engineering works. I'll formally move the item as chair. I'll ask Councillor Wilson to second.
Formally seconded, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody, rather than run through the list of councillors, anybody like to make any comments or ask any questions about this? Would you like to indicate? Okay, you're happy that we move to the vote then. The recommendations on page 129 of your agenda papers, that the Assistant Director Planning and Regeneration be authorised to take all enforcement actions listed on that page. I'll ask Kate to run through the roll call.
Councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor Barnes.
No comment.
How would you like to vote, Councillor Barnes?
Kate, Councillor Barnes declared an interest on this matter, so he's not taken part in the
yes,
debate.
Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor David Ellis.
4.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
4.
Councillor Elwood.
4.
Councillor Hope.
4.
Councillor Keneally.
4.
Councillor Lawrence.
4.
Councillor Miller.
4.
Councillor Paling.
4.
Councillor Parr.
4.
Councillor Scroggy.
4.
Councillor Wheeler.
4.
Councillor Wilkinson.
4.
And Councillor Truscott.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That was carried.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 9, breach of planning control, 3 Woburn Rise, Woodborough, reference number 0184/2020, unauthorised development. Mike, do you want to say anything about this, or we just take it from the photographs?
Yeah, I would suggest that Mr. Cartwright, if you could display the photograph of the site, please. The planning permission has been granted for alterations to the property. The development which has been undertaken isn't comprised in the approved plans. So as can clearly be seen to the left of the photograph, which is being displayed on the screen now, an unauthorised first floor extension has been erected, which is harmful within the street scene. A window on the side elevation also overlooks the adjacent property. And to the right-hand side of the photo, which isn't clearly shown, there's further unauthorised works in that the existing garage, where that has been extended, the roof isn't in accordance with the approved plans. And finally, the garage, which has been approved at the property, is constructed in the wrong location, closer to Woburn Rise, and again, not comprised in the approved plans. So a temporary stop notice was served under the scheme of delegation. That expires on the 3rd of December, so tomorrow. So should members resolve to take enforcement action in accordance with the officer report, it's intended to serve a full stop notice and enforcement notice tomorrow. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So we have the breach of planning control reference number 0184/2020 in relation to an authorised development. I'll move this item as chair and ask Councillor Wilkinson to second, please.
Formally seconded, Chair.
Rather than run through the list of councillors, does anybody wish to ask a question or make a comment about this? If you could show a raised hand. Otherwise, we will move to the vote, if you are all content with that. Okay, the recommendation on page 138 of your agenda papers is that the Assistant Director, Planning and Regeneration be authorised to take all enforcement action as listed on page. Kate? Can you run through the list of councillors, please?
Yes. Councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor Barnes.
4.
Councillor Barnfather.
4.
Councillor David Ellis.
4.
Councillor Rachel Ellis.
4.
Councillor Elwood.
4.
Councillor Hope.
4.
Councillor Keneally.
4.
Councillor Lawrence.
4.
Councillor Miller. Councillor Miller.
Sorry about that. 4.
Councillor Paling.
4.
Councillor Parr.
4.
Councillor Scroggy.
4.
Councillor Wheeler.
4.
Councillor Wilkinson.
4.
And Councillor Truscott.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That was carried.
Good, thank you very much. Agenda item 10, report to the Planning Committee, reapplication 2020-0217, an extension to the Folly, Park Lane, Lamley, page 139. This application was refused by the Borough Council on the 18th of October 2019. It was appealed to the Planning Inspectorate, who allowed the appeal. Fortunate, but we do lose one or two. Agenda item 11, report to the Planning Committee of future planning applications. Agenda item 12, Authority Monitoring Report for April 2019 to March 2020. You find on page 143. It's a report that is well worth reading by everybody. An immense amount of work has gone into preparing it. It's very interesting and very informative. And if you want to know how your council is performing, which obviously you do as councillors, it's not just planning, it's wide ranging, but this is an essential read. Of course, this report has already been submitted to Cabinet. Agenda item 13, report to Planning Committee, briefing notes to members outlining the changes to development rights under the Town and Country Plan Order, found on page 209. Report for information. Agenda item 14, Planning Delegation Panel Action Sheets, 16th of October, page 215. 23rd of October, page 217, 30th of October, page 221, 9th of November, page 223, 13th of November, page 225, and 20th of November, page 227. Finally, agenda item 15, any other items the Chair considers urgent? I don't have any agenda items that I consider urgent, except to thank you all for very much for coming to tonight's meeting, and have a safe journey home, though I know most of you are at home, and Merry Christmas to all and sundry, and see you in the middle of January.
Yes. Thank you, John.
Yes.